Hi there, I'm Skylar. My parents kicked me out at 13 because of a lie my sister told, and no one asked if it was true. Not once. They just believed her. And just like that, I lost everything. My home, my family, my place in the world. Years passed. They moved on, pretended I never existed, but I kept going. Quietly, alone. And now, they see my face on billboards, my name on a book, my story everywhere. But here's the thing. Do they regret what they did, or do they just regret that I survived without them? Success feels like a slow echo in an empty room. It bounces off the walls, loud at first, then fades into a kind of silence that only survivors recognize. I never imagined the first time I'd feel the weight of everything I'd achieved would be because of a text message. It wasn't congratulations. It wasn't anything personal. It was just a name. Mom. Lighting up my phone after over a decade of absolute silence. I stood still, the phone buzzing again in my hand, and for a second I couldn't even remember the sound of her voice. But my fingers shook. My chest tightened. I didn't open the message. Instead, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the name, as if it might change, as if maybe I was mistaken. I wasn't. That name cracked something. It made my chest heavy, like I'd swallowed stones. I hadn't thought about her in months, maybe years. Not really. I'd built a life, my own apartment, my own business, my own people, but her name made it all collapse inward like a trapdoor under my feet. And just like that, I was 13 again. Back in Boise, back in that suffocating house with walls that whispered things I wasn't supposed to hear. Back with Marla, my twin sister. Everyone always thought twins were supposed to be close. Two halves of one soul, but if that were true, Marla had swallowed her half of mine and smiled while doing it. We looked alike. That's where the similarities ended. I was loud, curious, always outside riding my bike, always asking questions. She stayed quiet, glued to books she didn't read, listening at doors she wasn't supposed to be behind. I had friends. She had followers. No one noticed that difference but me. Our parents, especially my mother, treated her like she could do no wrong. It didn't matter that I made the volleyball team, or that my English teacher said I had the sharpest mind in class. At home, I was the screw-up. Marla got gold stars just for existing. I got lectures for breathing too loud. That day at school, everything shifted. It was after lunch, and I was walking back to class when Mrs. Carmichael, the assistant principal, called my name over the intercom. My stomach dropped. I hadn't done anything. At least I didn't think I had. I remember walking down the hallway, my sneakers squeaking on the floor, and every step felt heavier than the last. The counselor's office smelled like coffee and panic. Inside sat Principal Jansen, arms folded, face stiff. Next to him, a counselor I barely knew and the boy from math class, Ethan, awkward and red-faced. They showed me screenshots from a phone, explicit texts, my name, my picture. I couldn't breathe. I didn't write these, I whispered. My voice barely existed. That's not my phone. I've never even had his number. They didn't believe me. Not really. Ethan mumbled something about not wanting to get anyone in trouble. My heart thudded so loudly in my ears I missed half of what they said next. Suspension? Investigation? My parents would be called. I remember standing up too quickly, feeling the world tilt. When I stepped out of the room, I saw Marla standing in the hallway. She was leaning against a locker, arms crossed. She didn't even flinch when our eyes met. In fact, she smirked, that half smile, half sneer. I felt something inside me shatter. That evening I tried to explain. I sat at the kitchen table while my dad stared at the wall, and Mom cleaned the same spot on the counter for 20 straight minutes. They're wrong, I said. It's not true. I didn't send anything. Mom turned to me like I'd insulted her personally. Marla would never do something like this, she said without even blinking. I hadn't mentioned Marla. Hours later, I left my room to get water and stopped cold in the hallway. The lights were off. Their bedroom door was cracked open. I heard Mom's voice, low but sharp, like a blade pressed against skin. I can't deal with her anymore. Marla's the only one I can trust. The other one? She's just trouble. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just stood there, barefoot on the hardwood floor, feeling like a ghost in my own house. Maybe I already was. After that night, nothing was the same. Marla walked through school like royalty. I shrank. Teachers looked at me with pity or suspicion. My friends drifted off, one by one, avoiding eye contact like they might catch something from me. I stopped speaking in class. I stopped showing up to practice. I started eating lunch in the girls' bathroom. That stall became my only safe place, cold tile walls and all. One afternoon, Miss Glassman handed me an envelope. Suspension, official. It wasn't the school that broke me. It was the silence at home. The fact that when I showed my mom the letter, she didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't even look at me. I kept that suspension letter tucked inside my math textbook, pretending I might still need it someday. Like maybe someone, somewhere, would finally care to read it and realize they were wrong. But no one asked, and no one looked. The envelope stayed sealed. My world, however, didn't. The house felt smaller almost overnight, like the walls had decided I didn't deserve space anymore. It wasn't just that I couldn't return to school. It was that home had shifted from cold indifference to something far more calculated. My mother didn't scream. She didn't slam doors or throw dishes. She just made sure I knew I wasn't welcome in my own life anymore. "You'll stay in your room until you learn to act like your sister," she said one morning, not even bothering to turn and look at me while she folded a dish towel. Her tone was flat, efficient, like she was talking about a grocery list. "Act like a liar?" I mumbled. Wrong move. Her eyes narrowed just enough to make the air in my throat freeze. "Don't push me, Skylar." I wasn't allowed past the hallway. No television, no phone. My laptop disappeared. When I asked about it, my dad shoved his hand in the air and muttered, "Don't make this harder than it has to be." That was his thing. Passive threats, emotional landmines disguised as reason. By day 3, my door was gone. Literally unhinged and dragged into the garage like it had committed a crime. In its place, my dad had taped a paper sign written in red marker, "Restricted area, do not enter." I stood in front of it for a full minute before going back inside. My room wasn't a bedroom anymore. It was a punishment cell. Food was left outside on paper plates like I had some kind of disease. The only contact I had with my parents was the sound of footsteps coming and going. Marla's voice floated down the hall every evening. Fake laughs, loud compliments, some new show she was watching with Dad. She even called him Pops now, like she was in on a private joke I didn't get to hear. The worst part wasn't the cruelty. It was the control, the eerie silence in place of answers. I scratched a question into the corner of my wooden desk with the tip of a pen. Am I even their daughter? One night I decided I couldn't take it anymore. Not the silence, not the invisibility. I folded a piece of notebook paper and started writing. It wasn't long, just a few lines. "I'm still your daughter. I don't know what Marla told you. I just want to be heard." I slipped it into a plain envelope and wrote Mom in cursive across the front. No frills, no begging, just truth. I tiptoed down the hallway while the living room TV hummed in the distance. Her bedroom door was cracked open. I placed the envelope on her neatly folded throw blanket and backed away like I was handling a grenade. I didn't sleep that night. I kept waiting, listening for the sound of footsteps approaching, the possibility that she'd knock or even just slide the door back into my frame. Nothing. By morning, the envelope had returned. It was on my pillow, torn directly down the middle. Not a word written, not a note. Just a quiet act of violence that made it clear. I wasn't misunderstood. I was unwanted. I pressed the ripped paper against my chest like I could somehow absorb it and dull the sting. My body curled in on itself as Marla's voice echoed from the kitchen. She was talking to Dad again, laughing. Something about a comedian on late-night TV. "I swear," he said, "my wife's so dumb, she thinks a prenup is a fitness app." Dad chuckled, amused. They were bonding over punchlines while I counted ceiling tiles and tried to imagine what life might feel like without always trying to prove I belonged. That night I made a choice. I flipped open my old math notebook, useless now, and began writing in the margins. Not equations, just memories, thoughts, moments no one saw. I called it the Book of Nobody in my head. That name made sense. I wasn't Skylar anymore. I was nobody. I wrote about the hallway, the paper plates, the missing door. I wrote about how quiet cruelty cuts deeper than yelling. I wrote until my hand cramped, then slid the notebook under the loose floorboard beneath my bed, the one spot Marla didn't know existed. If no one will hear me, I whispered to the dark, I'll leave something behind that says I was here, that I mattered. A few more days passed in the usual silence. I'd learned to stop expecting sounds of concern from the hallway. No footsteps slowing near my door, no knocks, no questions. Just the clinking of dishes from the kitchen, the low hum of sitcoms Marla laughed too loudly at, and the occasional barking command from my father, reminding me what not to touch. It was a Sunday morning when the next crack appeared. I had just stepped out of my room to use the bathroom, a rare moment when I dared cross the invisible boundary of their rules. Marla was already there, leaning against the doorframe with a cup of juice like she'd been waiting for me. "You really think writing little love notes to Mom is going to fix your freak reputation?" she said casually, swirling her drink. I ignored her and stepped forward, reaching for the doorknob. She didn't move. "You don't get it, do you?" she whispered, smiling. "You were never one of us." I didn't reply. I pressed my shoulder slightly, nudging past her, not shoving, just enough to squeeze by. She gasped dramatically and dropped to the floor like a rag doll, letting the cup spill across the tiles. "Ow! She pushed me! She did it again!" she cried out loud and trembling like she was auditioning for a crime show. I froze. My hand was still on the bathroom door. I hadn't even looked at her. An hour later, my mother appeared at my door. No knock, no warning. She stood in the frame, holding an ice pack against her temple like a crown of accusation. "You shoved me into the doorframe, Skylar," she said coldly. My head snapped up. "What?" "Marla said you were angry. You shoved past her. She said you've been unstable. Then when I asked you to explain, you lashed out. You hit me." I shot up from my mattress. "I didn't touch you. Are you kidding me?" My father's voice boomed from behind her. "You've crossed the line." He shoved past both of us and yanked open my closet door. "Get your things." "What? No, please, just listen to me." He was pulling clothes off hangers and tossing them into my old duffel bag. No folding, no care. Like I was already gone. I ran to grab his arm. "I didn't do anything." "You're a threat to this house," he growled. "To your own mother." "She's lying," I cried, pointing toward Marla's room. "Ask her to say it to my face." My mother didn't speak. She stood behind him like a shadow, arms folded, expression carved from concrete. I wanted to scream, but my throat was closing. The panic sat hot in my chest, rising like bile. I tried again. I begged, "Please, please, Mom." She turned away. I sank to the floor, knees hitting hardwood, sobbing into my hands as the zipper of my duffel closed behind me like a prison door. As my father stormed out, I reached for my phone. Somehow it was still in the drawer. Maybe they'd forgotten it. My fingers trembled as I opened the screen. Marla had posted her latest masterpiece. "Abusers belong behind locked doors or out in the street." Over 400 likes. Comments flooding in. "Stay strong, girl." "You're so brave for speaking up. She's toxic. You don't deserve that." I dropped the phone onto the bed like it burned. She'd gone public. She wasn't content ruining me at home. She wanted an audience. I didn't have anyone to call. Not really. So I did the only thing I could. I slipped outside, crossed the street barefoot, and knocked on Mrs. O'Neill's door. Her eyes widened at the sight of me. "Skylar, honey, are you okay? Can I use your phone?" Minutes later, Grandma Eloise's voice cracked through the speaker. "I'm coming right now." She arrived in 15 minutes flat, storming into the yard like a hurricane dressed in orthopedic shoes and a windbreaker. "Where is she?" she asked. "Where's Denise?" My mother emerged from the porch, arms crossed. "She can't stay here anymore," she said bluntly. "She's unstable." Eloise's jaw tightened. "She's your daughter, Denise. She's not safe." My father appeared behind her. "She can take her, but she's not coming back." Eloise squared her shoulders. "You think treating your own child like garbage makes you better? Richard, if you weren't my son-in-law—" He cut her off with a sneer. "You say one more word, and I swear I'll call CPS on you for interfering." That was it. Eloise turned, her voice soft now. "Let's go, Sky." I didn't argue. I didn't even grab the duffel, just my backpack. No one stopped me. No one apologized. No one even looked up. The door closed behind me, and I didn't flinch. I climbed into the passenger seat, still trembling, as Eloise drove in silence. We passed the school, the park, the gas station where Dad used to take us for ice cream. None of it felt real anymore. My hands clutched the straps of my backpack like they were the only things tethering me to earth. In the rearview mirror, my house got smaller and smaller, like it couldn't disappear fast enough. The first night at Eloise's house, I barely moved. I curled up on the pull-out couch like a stray animal that didn't know if the new shelter was safe or just temporary. The silence wasn't as sharp as it had been in my parents' house. It was softer here, the kind you fall asleep to. Still, I didn't. Over the next few months, I built a routine. Wake up before Eloise, fix my own breakfast, walk to school, keep my head down, come home, study, eat quietly, sleep, repeat. She never asked questions unless they mattered, like whether I wanted chicken or meatloaf, or if I remembered to take the trash bins out. That was the kindness I hadn't realized I'd needed. But healing isn't instant, and comfort isn't a cure. Even in a safe place, shame clung to me like smoke. I walked through the hallways of my new school, with my shoulders curved inward, like I was trying to take up less space. My new classmates had heard things. Rumors spread fast, even in towns that barely knew your name. One Monday, I opened my locker to find a sticky note. She hits Mom's, stay clear. I didn't report it. I peeled it off, crumpled it, and tossed it. My skin burned, but I said nothing. The whispers got louder as the days passed. I caught pieces. That's her, Skylar something. She pushed her mom into a wall. Wasn't she in juvie or something? I never corrected them. What was the point? My own family hadn't defended me. Who would believe me now? Then, during lunch one day, a girl with bright orange nails leaned across the table and smirked. So, she said, loud enough for the next 3 tables to hear, how's life outside the detention center? Her friends burst into laughter. I stood up without a word, carrying my tray to a corner seat near the vending machines, my new safe zone. It wasn't a stall, but it felt just as isolated. Despite it all, I kept my grades up. Straight A's. No skipped classes. I refused to give Eloise a reason to regret taking me in. She never asked for anything, so I never asked for help. That was the silent agreement we lived by. But even engines burn out if you run them too hard. One afternoon, somewhere between biology and history, I remember standing up from my desk and then... nothing. Just a sharp, muffled thump. By the time I opened my eyes, the nurse was hovering over me and my classmates were gone. They said I'd fainted, said I looked pale, said it was probably dehydration. I knew better. They called an ambulance anyway. At the hospital, under the white blue lights and sterile scent of sanitized everything, I laid still while nurses checked my vitals and whispered about exhaustion. One of them said something about malnourishment. Another asked if I'd been skipping meals. Eloise arrived 20 minutes later, face drawn and silent. She sat beside my bed and held my hand while the doctor talked. And then she did something I didn't expect. She pulled out her phone and called my mother. I could hear the ringing, the click, and then Denise's voice, sharp and unbothered, coming through the speaker. She's at the ER, Eloise said. She collapsed. A long pause, then, that's not my responsibility anymore. You chose to take her. She's yours now. My eyes met Eloise's. She moved to hang up, but I spoke first, voice low and firm. Don't call her again. She nodded. I didn't cry. Not this time. The nurse came in an hour later with a clipboard and a warm smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. We're going to keep you overnight for observation, sweetheart, just to be safe. Okay, I said, already turning my face toward the wall. Later that evening, while Eloise went home to grab fresh clothes for me, a different nurse stepped in, young, probably fresh out of nursing school. She held a stack of magazines and paper in her arms. We leave these in the teen wing. Sometimes it helps pass time. She set them on my tray. Flyers, doodled notebooks, even a puzzle book. One flyer caught my eye. Bold letters across the top read, National Young Writers Competition, entries now open. Something shifted. I reached for it, fingers brushing the edges, and glanced down at the fine print. Original short story. 1,500 words. Submit by March 15th. I didn't know if I could write fiction. I didn't even know if I wanted to. But something inside whispered, try. That night from my hospital bed, I took the blank back of the flyer and started scribbling in pencil. Not about my life, not yet, but something close. A girl trapped in a glass house. A voice no one could hear. The words came slowly at first, then faster. No one's coming, I wrote near the bottom, but I'm still here. A week after I left the hospital, I mailed in the story. I didn't expect anything to come of it. I didn't even sign my full name, just Sky. That felt safer, like I could dip a toe into the world without letting it swallow me whole. But 3 weeks later, an envelope showed up at Eloise's mailbox. I saw the school district logo and assumed the worst. I thought maybe the rumors had circled again, or a teacher wanted to check in with the girl they assumed was emotionally unstable. I didn't expect a letter that started with, "Congratulations." I had placed second in the regional round. My story would be published in their annual anthology. There'd be a small award ceremony at the local library. Nothing big, but to me, it felt enormous. Eloise read the letter twice. Then she turned to me with watery eyes and said, "You did this, all on your own." It was the first time I'd felt proud. Not quiet survival proud, not I got through the day proud, but genuinely accomplished. Like I wasn't just existing anymore. I was building something. News of the competition must have made its way around town. Small towns were like that. Whispers traveled faster than cars. A week before the ceremony, I got a phone call. Unknown number. My stomach dropped when I heard the voice. "Skylar?" It was my father. "I saw the paper. That writing thing. Your name was in there." I froze. He chuckled like we were catching up after a weekend apart. "We're proud of you. Your mom and I, we talk about you all the time." I almost laughed. Talked about me? They hadn't said my name in 2 years. "What do you want?" I asked flatly. There was a pause. Just enough silence to feel the shift coming. "Well, we were thinking maybe you'd want to come by sometime. Visit. Maybe catch up." "Catch up," I echoed. "You're doing well. And, well, things have been tough around here. House repairs, bills, retirement planning." There it was. "You want money," I said. "What? No, not like that. We just thought since you're doing well, maybe you could pitch in a little." My jaw tightened. "I was 13 when you kicked me out," I said. "You didn't even give me shoes. Now you want help with your roof?" "Skylar," he sighed, like I was the dramatic one. "Family takes care of each other." Funny, that's not how I remember it. I hung up. I wanted to throw the phone, but instead I wrote. For hours. Not fiction this time, just memory. My truth, the broken version, the raw version. The next day I posted the story to my private blog. No names, no exact details. Just the truth. I didn't expect anyone to read it, but they did. Dozens of comments, then hundreds. People saw themselves in it. And then, a week later, I got a text from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. "Is this about your parents?" Then another message. "If you ever want to tell your side, I'll listen." And another. "We always wondered why you disappeared." I didn't reply right away, but I started planning. The next call came 2 weeks later, this time from a blocked number. "You think you're so clever," Marla snapped. "Writing garbage online, making people pity you? Grow up, Skylar." I didn't answer. "You're not special," she hissed. "You're just bitter. And lonely." I almost thanked her, because in that moment I knew she was wrong. I wasn't lonely. I had Eloise. I had words. I had strangers who believed me. That was more than I'd ever had with them. The final straw came the following weekend. My parents called again, this time both on speaker. "We saw what you posted," my mother said coldly. "You're painting this family in a bad light." "I didn't mention your names." "You might as well have. People are talking. Your aunt called us crying." "That's not my problem." "You want to play games?" my father snapped. "Fine, but don't expect us to just sit here while you ruin our lives." "Funny," I said calmly. "That's what I thought when you ruined mine." The silence on their end was delicious. "Here's my condition," I added. "You want money? You want me back? Then get in front of the same people you lied to and tell them the truth. That Marla framed me, that you abandoned your own child, publicly, not a text, not a phone call, an actual statement. You're insane, my mother said. No, I replied. I'm done being silent. You'll regret this, I smiled. I already regretted trusting you. There's nothing left to lose. And with that, I blocked both numbers. Then I opened my laptop and started drafting an email. Not to my parents. To every relative they had ever poisoned against me. I attached screenshots. I laid out the timeline. I told the story the way it had always happened. And at the bottom I added, I'm not asking you to pick sides. I'm just finally speaking. I hit send. And for the first time, I didn't flinch. By the time I turned 26, Seattle felt more like home than any place I'd ever known. It was gray, sure, rainy and cold, but something about the air felt honest. I'd built my life here piece by piece, freelancing, then landing a steady job with a digital agency, then going viral for a video I almost didn't post. The clip was simple. Me speaking on branding for trauma survivors at a local seminar. A friend recorded it and uploaded it to LinkedIn without telling me. Overnight it spread. People called me brave, authentic. Some even said my words helped them find their voice. Then came the messages. I always knew you'd make something of yourself. So proud to be related to you. We should catch up sometime. Coffee? I didn't answer any of them. Too many of those names belonged to people who stayed silent when I needed noise. But one message stopped me cold. Marla, just one line. I lied, but that was 15 years ago. Move on. I stared at it for a full minute. Not shock, not even rage. Just a strange, cold stillness. Like someone had opened a window in winter and the draft was creeping in. That was it? A casual confession, like she was admitting to stealing a slice of cake. Not years of character assassination? I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a note on my phone and typed a memory I hadn't let myself revisit in years. I was 9. I'd won a spelling bee at school, gold ribbon, awkward photo, the whole deal. I came home clutching the prize like it was a medal from the Olympics. The ribbon disappeared that night. Marla walked into the kitchen the next morning holding it casually. Found this under my bed, she told Mom, grinning. Mom beamed at her. You're so neat, she said. Unlike your sister, always losing things. I hadn't lost it, she stole it, and that's how it always went. She lied. I got punished. She smiled. I disappeared. That night I opened a new draft in Gmail. Subject, truth, no apologies. I wrote the email slowly, choosing every word with the precision of a scalpel. I didn't rant. I didn't beg. I attached the screenshot of Marla's message, her casual admittance. Then I walked them through everything. The fake messages, the expulsion, the years of silence, the moment my mother shredded my letter like it was trash, the time my father said I was a threat to the house. I wasn't asking for an apology. I wasn't looking for revenge. I ended it like this. Silence is not neutral. If you choose not to see what happened, you're choosing the side that caused it. Then I hit send. I expected nothing. Maybe a few unsubscribes. More silence. But the replies came quickly. A cousin I barely remembered. I had no idea. I'm sorry. An uncle. Your mother said you ran away. I'm sick reading this. Even Aunt Lila, who used to give me cough drops like candy, wrote, Thank you for telling the truth. Marla blocked me on everything the next day, and that was confirmation enough. But the real surprise came 2 days later, on a Thursday morning when I was drinking bad office coffee and reviewing website analytics. An email pinged my inbox. No subject, but bolded with legal flair. Cease and desist from my parents' attorney. Apparently, they believed my blog and the disparaging statements in my recent email violated their right to reputation. I laughed, out loud, right there in the middle of my open plan workspace. Maya from the next desk raised an eyebrow. You okay? I just got sued by my parents, I said too calmly. She blinked. Like, real sued? Allegedly. Damn, she muttered. They must really not want the truth out. They don't, I said, but it's already out. That night, I didn't panic. I didn't pace. I drafted my response like a woman who'd been building to this moment her whole life. If they wanted war, I was done playing fair. 3 weeks passed. The cease and desist threat sat unread in a folder named Closure. Not because I was ignoring it, but because it had no weight. I wasn't scared of letters anymore. I'd been silenced in deeper ways than paper ever could. That Friday afternoon, I was halfway through editing a client's pitch deck when a notification popped up. Instagram DM from Courtney S. The name sounded vaguely familiar. I clicked. Hey Skylar, don't know if you remember me. We had English together sophomore year. I just wanted to say, I always thought your sister made that up. She told people you hit her, but I never saw anything. I never saw bruises. I always wondered. Below it, a grainy screenshot. Marla's message to Courtney, dated October 2009. Haha, I faked that so good. She didn't even touch me, but you should have seen Dad's face, total Oscar-worthy moment. I stared at it. My stomach didn't drop. My hands didn't shake. I just felt confirmation. Like a ghost I'd spent years trying to convince people was real had finally spoken on tape. I saved the image. Then I called my cousin Kaylin. She was one of the few relatives who hadn't chosen sides, who'd kept her distance, but never closed her heart. When she picked up, I didn't explain everything. I just forwarded the screenshot. 10 seconds of silence. Then, you need to send this to everyone. All of them. They deserve the full picture. I hesitated. My voice lowered. What if it just makes things worse? She didn't pause. They made it worse by lying. You're just undoing the knots. That night, I drafted the message, attached the screenshot, included a brief sentence. This message isn't meant to hurt anyone, just to clarify what I endured in silence. I don't need your approval, but if truth matters to you, this should matter too. I hit send. Within hours, I saw movement, notifications lighting up. Aunt Karen unfollowed Marla. So did Uncle Brad. Even Denise's best friend, who once called me ungrateful, removed every trace of Marla on social media. Someone forwarded the screenshot to Marla's company. Monday morning, her employer posted a cryptic status. We hold our team to high standards of integrity. Anything less does not reflect our values. 2 hours later, Marla's name was scrubbed from their website. Denise tried to post some vague defense. Family business should stay in the family. But it backfired. Hard. Aunt Donna replied, so should family betrayal. I didn't post anything. I didn't need to. I just watched it all unfold with the same stillness I used to sit with in the girls' bathroom years ago, only this time the door wasn't locked, and I wasn't hiding. Then came the invitation, a family dinner, not formal, not holiday-related, just a gathering. I wasn't sure if it was a trap or an olive branch, but I went. It was at Aunt Lydia's. Small kitchen, big windows, nervous tension you could slice with a butter knife. I said nothing for the first 30 minutes. Let them talk about casseroles and sports and the weather like nothing ever happened. Then Uncle Darren cleared his throat. He wasn't loud, but the room went quiet anyway. We didn't believe you, he said. Back then, that was wrong. Several heads nodded. Someone whispered, we failed you. I looked up from my plate. Belief isn't a favor, I said. It's a responsibility, especially when silence costs someone their entire childhood. No one replied, but no one looked away either. Later, I stepped outside. The night air bit at my skin, but it felt good. Honest, the way a clean cut hurts but stops the infection. My phone buzzed. Marla. Why? That was it. Just one word. I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back, because I deserved peace more than you deserved silence. I didn't wait for a reply. I just walked. Justice isn't loud. Sometimes it just doesn't flinch when the world shakes. A few weeks after that night, I found myself staring at my laptop, unable to look away from a simple dashboard. It wasn't a viral post. Not then. It wasn't even tied to my name. It was a quiet blog I'd launched under a pseudonym, The Glass House Girl. No photos, no tags. Just a story called The Sister Who Lied. I hadn't shared it. Not once. I'd written it in the dim glow of a kitchen lamp at 3 a.m. after waking from a dream where I was 13 again, yelling, I didn't do it! And no one turned around. But someone found it, then someone else. It showed up in survivor forums, quoted like scripture. The truth didn't set me free. It made me strong enough to walk away. Then it made its way to Reddit, and TikTok, and Twitter, under threads like #FamilyBetrayal and #HealingThroughTruth. At first, I didn't want to be known. I just wanted someone, anyone, to see me the way I had never been seen. But anonymity, like silence, can only protect you so long before it starts to feel like hiding. When a complete stranger emailed me a screenshot of the post captioned, "Did you write this? I think I needed to read it today." I didn't answer right away, but when the third email came with just 3 words, "You saved me," I logged into LinkedIn, took a breath, and wrote, "Yes, this is my story, and I survived it." I hit post. By the time I finished lunch, it had 9,000 views. That night, it hit 45,000, then 78,000. I stopped counting after that, because the views weren't what mattered. It was the messages. Some said, "This happened to my brother." Some wrote, "I'm 60, and I thought I was crazy until now." Some just wrote, "Thank you." I thought I'd feel exposed. I didn't. I felt anchored. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting to pain, I was repurposing it. Then, a message came through from someone named Ben Rivers, editor, New York. "Your voice is lightning in a bottle. I think this story needs to be a book." I stared at it for a long time, not because I didn't believe him, but because I'd never let myself imagine that far. A book? About this? About me? Would it feel healing, or would it feel like reopening the wound? I called Eloise that night. She was halfway through folding laundry, but she stopped when I said, "What if I wrote it all down for real this time?" She didn't hesitate. "If it helps someone else not feel crazy, it's worth it." I called Ben back the next day. "I'll do it," I told him, "but on one condition. Name it. No sugarcoating, no soft focus. If we do this, it's raw, honest, full truth." He didn't flinch. "That's exactly what I want." We signed the contract a week later. I flew to New York to meet the team, walked into that publishing house with a borrowed coat and secondhand boots, but stood like I owned the place. In the conference room, I handed them my manuscript, every page of pain, mapped and organized, footnoted, and finally believed. Later that evening, I sat in the hotel, rereading the comments on the original post. There were hundreds. Some were from teenagers, others from people decades older than me. A few just left emojis, but one stood out. No profile picture, no username, just words. "I never told anyone, not once, until I read this. Thank you." That night, I opened the front page of the manuscript and wrote, "For those who survived what they couldn't prove. Healing doesn't mean the scars disappear. It just means you're no longer bleeding." The bookstore was already buzzing when I stepped inside. Portland rain slicked the windows, and the scent of paper, coffee, and something vaguely cinnamon hung in the air. A stack of my memoirs sat at the front, their glossy covers catching the warm light. Uninvited, the house I built alone, my name beneath it, real and unhidden. A woman in her 50s clutched the book to her chest as she approached me. "I read it in one night," she said, voice trembling. "I thought I was crazy for 30 years. I nodded and opened her copy. My hand moved on autopilot. "To your voice, may it never be silenced." The line stretched past the shelves, past the cafe counter, winding near the entrance. Some readers were crying, some couldn't speak. A few just smiled through trembling lips. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a witness, not to my own pain anymore, but to the fact that we weren't alone. That evening, back at the hotel, I turned on my phone and saw the email. No subject line, just my dad's name in the from field. "Your mother is sick. She wants to see you." That was it. No greeting, no explanation. I stared at the screen for a long moment, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then, slowly, I typed, "I hope she finds peace. But I'm not the cure for her guilt." I didn't send it. I didn't need to. Forgiveness doesn't always end in reunions. Sometimes it's just letting go of the hope for a better apology. I closed the laptop and sat by the window, watching the street below blur under the rain. Somewhere in that same town, my parents probably sat in the same house, in the same chairs, maybe even saying my name, but not in love. Only in absence. I didn't need to go back. News had traveled. Marla had moved out of state after the social fallout. No public statement. No court case. Just disappeared. Her job no longer listed her on their website. The applause was gone, and all that remained was the hush that follows truth. As for Denise and Richard, they stayed put, still in that beige house in Boise, same curtains, same porch swing. But I'd heard they don't host family dinners anymore. They rarely get visitors. And when my name comes up, it's not with pride. It's with a grimace, like someone remembering a wound that never quite healed right. It's not revenge. It's reality. 6 months passed like a breeze after a storm, calm, but never quite still. Next week, I was flying to Boston. I'd been invited to speak at a national trauma recovery conference. Keynote. I packed light. Just one suitcase and my old notebook, pages now full of scribbles, tear stains, and things I never thought I'd say out loud. Eloise stood at the curb when I loaded the car. She hugged me, tightly and without ceremony. "You didn't just survive, Sky," she whispered. "You lifted the whole storm off your shoulders." I smiled into her scarf. "And now I get to help others weather theirs." As the car pulled away, I watched her grow smaller in the rear view. Not because I was leaving her behind, but because I was carrying her with me. Her strength, her faith, her belief in the version of me that didn't need anyone's permission to speak. At the airport, I opened my phone one last time and scrolled to the bookmarked quote I'd saved years ago. "You are not what they did. You are what you decide to become despite it." I never needed revenge. I just needed to remember that my life was still mine. You know, for the longest time, I thought healing meant fixing everything. Repairing the relationships, earning back the love I never truly had, forcing closure where none existed. But I've learned something else, something truer. Healing isn't about returning to what broke you. It's about building something stronger from the pieces. If you've ever been silenced, shamed, or made to feel small by people who should have lifted you up, I want you to hear this. You still matter. Even when they don't say sorry, even when no one shows up, you matter. What we survive doesn't define us. What we choose to become after does. I didn't write my story for revenge. I wrote it so someone else wouldn't feel as alone as I once did. If that someone is you, then I'm glad I kept going. So now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been blamed for something you didn't do? Have you ever found strength in your silence or in finally speaking? Let's talk in the comments. Drop a 1 if this story touched you, or tell me where in the world you're watching from. If you disagreed with anything, tell me that too. Let's have a real conversation. And hey, if you want more true stories that hit where it hurts and heal where it matters, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. Hit the bell so you don't miss what comes next. Your story matters. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. Hi, I'm Aileen. On my 33rd birthday, I sat alone at a table set for 6. I wore heels I hated, poured the wine they never showed up to share, until my phone buzzed. The message from my mother read, "You're not our priority right now." They didn't forget. They made other plans without me, using the money I gave them. They ghosted my dinner to throw a party for my brother. How do you come back from something like that? Or maybe the better question is, why would you want to? I arrived 15 minutes early, just as the sun dipped behind the Denver skyline, casting long amber shadows across the sidewalk. There was a light chill in the air, just enough to make me glad I'd chosen the long-sleeved dress. It wasn't fancy, but it was intentional. The kind of outfit you wear when you want people to know you made an effort. The hostess glanced at her list and smiled. "Party of 6?" I nodded, smoothing the napkin in my hand. "Yes. Aileen, I made the reservation last week." She led me to a table near the front window. 6 seats, clean, elegant place settings. A small votive candle flickering in the middle. I sat on the end, facing the entrance. The waiter stopped by. "Would you like to wait to order, or—" "They're just running a little late," I interrupted, too quickly. "I'll wait." He nodded politely and walked away. I checked my phone. 6:47 p.m. Nothing. I tried not to overthink it. Zinnia was always fashionably late. Curtis probably lost track of time again. And Mom, well, she rarely arrived early to anything unless it was someone else's event. I adjusted my fork slightly. Then again. A nervous tick. I'd picked this place for a reason. Quiet. Familiar. Not too expensive, not too casual. A place that said, "You matter enough for me to plan this." I scrolled through my phone to distract myself, pretending to be busy. An email from work. A sale at a store I didn't shop at anymore. Then the screen lit up again. This time, a text. From Mom. I unlocked it immediately. "You're not our priority right now. Enjoy your dinner." That was it. No happy birthday. No explanation. Just those 13 words, wrapped in a tone that felt rehearsed. I stared at it, reread it twice. Then again. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was deliberate. The waiter returned with a wrapped package. "Someone dropped this off earlier today for you," he said. "Said it was from your family." I thanked him, managing the kind of smile you give strangers when you don't want them to ask questions. The wrapping was neat, the kind Zinnia always insisted on. Minimalist, matte gold, no bows. I unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a scarf, pale blue silk. I held it up and felt a sinking recognition in my gut. I had bought this exact scarf for Mom last Christmas. I remembered the brand, the stitching, even the little snag near the edge where she caught it on her ring. I looked at the card tucked beneath the tissue paper. "Happy birthday, from all of us." But underneath that message, faintly visible, was my own handwriting, the one I'd written last year. "Love you always, Mom." They hadn't even bothered to use a new card, just rewrote over the original, like memory could be overwritten the same way. I placed the scarf back in the box. My hands were steady, but my breath wasn't. A couple at the table beside me sang softly, some kind of anniversary celebration. Glasses clinked. Laughter bubbled from the back near the bar. The world kept turning. I lifted my wine glass and took a sip. I didn't cry. I didn't call. There was no panic, no drama, just a weight settling inside me like concrete. The thing about being excluded enough times is that it eventually stops feeling shocking. I remembered birthdays where my presence felt optional, ones where Zinnia gave a speech and forgot to mention me, or where I ended up taking pictures instead of being in them. This one was different, though. This one was mine, and they chose not to show up. I sat for a while longer, watching the streetlights blink on one by one. Then I pulled a sticky note from my purse. I'd brought it to jot down a grocery list, maybe. I used it for something else. 5 words. That was all I needed. I left a 20 under my plate, more than enough for the wine, and walked out quietly. I didn't tell the waiter goodbye. I didn't check my phone. On the table, beside the untouched bread and the recycled gift box, sat the note. "Thank you. No more seats." By the time I got back to my apartment, Denver had gone quiet. The sky outside my window was holding on to the last bits of blue before turning completely black. I dropped my purse on the counter, slipped off my shoes, and tossed the sticky note I'd left at the restaurant next to the fruit bowl I never filled. The apartment still smelled faintly of hairspray and anticipation. I didn't bother turning on the lights. The glow from the city was enough to navigate around my own disappointment. I poured a glass of water I wouldn't finish and sat down at the edge of the couch, like I was still waiting for someone to join me. My phone buzzed. I ignored it for a moment, half hoping it was just another calendar reminder. But something in me itched. It was a notification from Instagram. Zinnia had posted a new photo. My thumb hovered over the screen. I shouldn't have clicked, but I did. The image loaded slowly. Then it hit me like a punch in the throat. There they were, Velma, Zinnia, Curtis, even Uncle Ray, who hadn't been invited to anything since he got caught lying about Dad's will. They were standing in front of the Marina restaurant in Boulder, smiling, glowing, holding glasses of champagne. Curtis stood front and center, arms stretched out like some hometown hero. In his right hand, a keyring with a motorcycle emblem. The caption? "Celebrating the dreamer." He finally made it happen. My stomach turned. I zoomed in. Velma was wearing the same scarf they'd regifted me just hours earlier. On Curtis's wrist, A new watch. Sleek, expensive, familiar. I blinked twice. It was the same model he'd sent me in a text 2 months ago, asking if I thought it was too much. I told him not to buy it. He'd said he couldn't afford it anyway. And yet, there it was. I set the phone down. For a second, I just stared at the reflection of my face on the black screen. Then I picked it up again and opened my banking app. There it was. Last Tuesday, $1,500 wired to Curtis's account. He'd said it was for rent. He'd cried. "They're threatening to kick me out, Aileen. I'm scared." He wasn't scared. He was shopping. I let the phone slide from my hand and fall onto the couch. My chest wasn't tight. My eyes weren't burning. I felt, still, like someone who had stepped out of their own body and was watching the scene from the ceiling. They hadn't just left me off the guest list. They'd used my money to fund the party. They'd raised a glass to my absence and paid for it with my kindness. I got up and walked over to the table. My laptop was already open from earlier that morning, when I'd tried to book a dinner reservation with enough seats for people who didn't even bother to reply. I clicked into my financial folder and created a new document. Support, unreciprocated. Line by line, I began adding what I could remember. Car loan relief, $2,800. Mortgage bridge payments, $5,200. Emergency dental for Zinnia's son, $600. Motorcycle celebration, funded unknowingly by me, $1,500. No receipts, no thank yous, no invitations. I copied the photo from Zinnia's post and pasted it beside the last line. Then I opened another tab and searched for the phrase, selective family amnesia, just to see if someone else had defined it better than I could. My phone buzzed again. A forwarded voicemail from Velma. I didn't play it. Instead, I let the notification sit on the screen while I stared out the window at the slow crawl of headlights in the distance. Somewhere, a couple was probably celebrating an anniversary. Somewhere, someone was holding a child close after a long week. Somewhere, people were choosing each other. And mine had chosen this. I whispered to the silence. This is what they chose. Let them live with it. The next morning came quietly, as if the world itself was trying not to intrude. I woke up not because of an alarm, but because the blinds hadn't been fully closed the night before. Pale light spilled across the carpet, cold and uninviting. My apartment, still tidy from hours of trying not to feel anything, looked like it had been set up for a guest who never arrived. I didn't reach for my phone. Instead, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the corner of the room where my suitcase leaned against the wall. Still packed from that weekend, I'd canceled to help Velma fix a leaking pipe. She said she'd tried calling Curtis first, but you know how boys are. I remembered missing a weekend getaway with people who actually wanted me around. And I remembered saying, "It's okay, Mom, I'll come." It was never okay. I just didn't know how to say that out loud. At the kitchen table, I opened my laptop and pulled up the spreadsheet I'd started the night before. I created a new tab and typed the title, Emotional Overdrafts. Then I began to list. Not just the wire transfers and checks, but the moments I had withdrawn something from myself to deposit it in someone else. Canceled trip to New Mexico, Curtis's car broke down. Thanksgiving catering, no reimbursement, never acknowledged. Zinnia's baby shower decor, last-minute ask, thanked only on Facebook. Velma's emergency dental bill, claimed she'd pay me back, never did. No tears, just facts. That was the difference between sadness and clarity. Sadness left you curled up. Clarity sat you up straight and asked for itemized proof. My mind wandered. There was Zinnia's wedding. I was seated near the back, next to the catering intern and someone's ex-boyfriend. When they raised glasses for the toast, Zinnia said, "To my amazing family," then forgot my name, called me Aileen with a long I, like I was a +1. And the Christmas Eve dinner, where Velma asked me to just help in the kitchen real quick, while everyone else posed for photos by the tree. I came out 20 minutes later with a tray of roasted vegetables and heard Uncle Ray ask, Oh, you were here? I was always there, just never counted as being there. The difference was subtle, but sharp. My phone finally buzzed. I glanced at the screen, a message from Marla. Hey, just wanted to give you a heads up. My aunt ran into your mom yesterday. She said Velma told people you're exaggerating things, making drama, said you've always been a bit much. I set the phone down slowly. So that was the story now. Not just erased, but rewritten. My silence wasn't just being ignored. It was being used. I thought about every family gathering I'd shown up to out of guilt, every birthday party where I'd taken the photos instead of being in them, every gift I'd sent when no one remembered mine. And I thought of the photo I'd seen just hours earlier, of them celebrating Curtis, funded by my blind generosity. I scrolled through my phone and found a picture from 2 years ago. Holiday dinner. Everyone was smiling. Velma was holding a glass of wine. Zinnia wore a red satin dress. Curtis had already spilled gravy on his shirt. I wasn't in the picture, because I was the one who took it. I held the phone in my hand for a long time, staring at the image like it might finally let me in. It didn't. I was never in the picture, I whispered to the empty room, because I was the one framing it. Monday arrived wearing a gray sky and the kind of breeze that feels like something's about to shift, even if no one says it out loud. I brewed coffee more out of habit than need. The silence in my apartment was less of a comfort that morning and more like a dare. After answering a few mandatory work emails, I opened the browser and logged into the mortgage account Velma and I had shared since Dad passed. I wasn't expecting anything dramatic. Just needed to double-check that the last payment I'd made actually went through. That's how it always started, with something small. But then, while skimming through the account details, I noticed an unfamiliar document attached to the property profile. It was a revised ownership agreement. My name had been listed on the original deed for 3 years. Now it was gone. I clicked the download button and opened the PDF. There it was, filed just 4 weeks ago. My name had been removed. The new document listed Velma and Curtis as co-owners. No signature line for me. No request for consent. Just a clean, silent erasure. I grabbed my phone and called the county clerk's office. After 5 minutes of hold music and 2 transfers, I was connected to a woman with a calm voice and a tired tone. "Yes, ma'am," she said, after I gave her the file number. "This revision was submitted in person. Paperwork's been processed and notarized." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Was there a signature from me on file?" "Let me check." The pause on her end stretched so long, I almost ended the call myself. Then she returned. "There's a signature, yes. It says Aileen M. Jennings. Looks tidy, but no ID attached, no confirmation, just the signature page." "I never signed that," I said flat. "That's not mine." "Well," she replied, her voice now carrying a hint of tension, "I'd recommend contacting a property attorney if you believe fraud was involved." I thanked her and ended the call. Fraud. My own mother's hand likely on the pen, drawing a line through my place in the family. Again, only this time, legally. I minimized the window and tried to steady my breathing. My eyes caught the corner of a folder on my desktop. I opened it. Inside was a copy of last year's event flyer for the senior community fundraiser, the one I'd anonymously funded when the city cut their budget mid-year. Velma had shown up to the event in pearls and a pastel suit and gave a speech that left 2 board members in tears. She accepted the plaque in the family's name. The newsletter the following month called her the beating heart of the Jennings family legacy. My name wasn't printed anywhere, not even in the fine print. I dragged the revised deed into the folder and retitled it, Not Forgotten, Just Ignored. Then I took screenshots of the newsletter article and the event photo where Velma was front and center, smiling beside the mayor. I pasted them all into a single document labeled Pattern. I didn't call her. I didn't confront anyone. Instead, I drafted an email to a real estate attorney I found through a referral from a coworker. It was short, direct. I attached the files, laid out the timeline, and hit send before I could overthink it. The decision felt clean. Like pulling a splinter you hadn't realized had gone septic. Scrolling back through the PDF, I stopped on the final line. All heirs in agreement. Verified. They didn't even pretend to check. They just assumed. I whispered to the quiet screen. I wasn't just forgotten. I was deleted. The light outside had begun to dim, slipping into that soft blue-gray hush that happens right before night settles in. Shadows from the trees danced across the living room floor, stretching long and uncertain. I hadn't changed out of my work clothes, hadn't really done much at all. My shoes were by the door. The microwave meal was half eaten on the table, and I sat motionless on the couch, staring at the muted TV like it owed me something. I had grown used to the quiet, but that evening, the silence felt wrong. Not peaceful, performative, like something was waiting to happen, like a drum roll before the drop. Then a knock, soft but firm. Not hesitant. No, it was the kind of knock that said, "I'm coming in, whether you like it or not." I opened the door, already bracing myself, and there she was. Velma, holding a pastel gift bag, the kind you'd pick up last minute from a pharmacy. Tissue paper fluffed up like whipped topping. Her face was tight, every inch of her smile strained, like it might snap if she blinked too hard. "Thought we could talk," she said, "like adults." I didn't move. I didn't offer her a seat, but she walked in anyway. Of course she did. That's always been Velma, deciding what the rules were and who had to follow them. She perched on the edge of the couch as if it might stain her. I stayed standing. There was no version of this where I made myself smaller just to make her comfortable. "I know how things looked," she began, smoothing her palms on her jeans. "But we honestly thought maybe you needed some space. After what happened at dinner," I blinked. Just once. "What happened at dinner," I said slowly, "was that you didn't show up." She acted like she didn't hear me, just kept going. "I just think there were misunderstandings, and, well, you're not always the easiest person to—" "To what?" I asked, letting the words slice the air between us. Velma exhaled sharply through her nose, dropping the nice girl act. "You're just so sensitive. You always take everything personally, like the world is out to get you." Ah, there it was. The old refrain, the family classic, that I was the problem, that I was too much, or not enough, that I couldn't take a joke, couldn't let things go, couldn't just be easy like everyone else. But I wasn't angry, not anymore. Not the way they wanted me to be. I looked her in the eye and said, calm and clear, "No, I just stopped lying for you." Her mouth twitched. Not a smile, not quite a frown. Just that uncomfortable recognition that someone has seen through you. She crossed her arms and leaned back, like she was settling into her disappointment. "I didn't come here to apologize," she said. "I just didn't want people thinking we abandoned you." Of course not. It wasn't guilt. It was optics. She placed the gift bag on the table, like some kind of offering, her expression stiff with effort. I picked it up, walked to the kitchen, and dropped it gently into the trash can. Not with anger, with finality. When I turned back around, she was still watching. Frozen. I reached into a drawer near the sink and pulled out the folder I had prepared earlier that week. I'd been waiting, not hoping, preparing. I handed her a single page from it. It was neat, detailed. A financial breakdown, every contribution I'd made to the family over the last 5 years. Dates, amounts, rent, groceries, utility bills, emergency bailouts no one ever paid back. Velma glanced at it, then looked at me. Her face didn't move, but her fingers tightened around the paper. "This," I said, "is who you've been talking about behind my back." She opened her mouth to respond, but didn't find the words. I didn't stop. "Next time someone asks where I've been, tell them the truth. Tell them I stopped paying to be ignored." Her shoulders dropped slightly, like the mask was too heavy to hold up anymore. She stood slowly, adjusted her coat like it was armor, and walked to the door. Just before she left, she paused, one hand on the knob, and muttered over her shoulder, "You'll regret this once you're alone." I walked her to the door, closed it quietly behind her, and turned the lock. Then, I leaned my forehead against the wood, breathing in the weight of it all. Not sadness, not victory, just release. "I've already been alone," I whispered. "This time, it's by choice." And in the stillness that followed, I didn't feel hollow. I felt free. Friday evening slid in without ceremony, the kind of quiet that makes you realize just how loud your life has been. Outside, the air had turned crisp, dry, with that first whisper of winter tucked beneath it. I hadn't bothered to shut the balcony door after the sun dipped below the skyline. Letting the cold creep in felt like my own silent rebellion. It stung a little, sure, but it was honest, cleaner than the backhanded concern and performance apologies I'd been fielding for weeks. I sat cross-legged on the edge of the couch, barefoot, a throw blanket wrapped around my shoulders like a shield. A glass of wine sat untouched on the side table beside me, the rim catching a sliver of lamplight. I wasn't drinking tonight, not out of discipline, but because I wanted to feel everything, clear and raw. My mind wandered back to Velma's visit, but this time, I didn't flinch. I didn't replay her tone or the expression she wore like she was auditioning for Martyr of the Year. Instead, I just heard the words. Not as threats, not as daggers, just as static that had finally stopped buzzing. "You'll regret this once you're alone." I let those words settle in the room like dust. Then I looked around. Alone wasn't new. Alone wasn't a punishment. It was where I had always done my clearest thinking, where I'd stitched myself back together after the last time they tore through me with their expectations, their entitlement, their relentless hunger to take without asking. I stood slowly, walked to the balcony door, and shut it. The latch clicked into place with a sound that felt final, like a door that doesn't need to open again. I turned to go back to the couch, and that's when my phone lit up. The family group chat. Alive and well, apparently. It had been weeks since I opened it. Still, the notifications crawled across my lock screen like a bad dream coming back for another round. Emergency call tonight. 8 p.m. sharp. No drama this time. Let's try to keep it civil and productive. And then, from Zinnia, "Don't invite her this year. She ruins the mood." The chat had a new name now, Family First, followed by a broken heart emoji and a waving hand. They didn't remove me. That would have taken a spine. Instead, they just kept talking as if I'd already left the room, as if I never belonged in it. I stared at the thread for a moment. My thumb hovered. Then I hit mute. Then delete. Not rage, not spite, just peace. I opened my inbox, hoping for something to pull my focus somewhere else, somewhere less toxic. And there it was. A new email from the real estate attorney I'd contacted earlier in the week. Subject: Final title adjustment confirmed. I clicked it open, my pulse slow and even. The message was short. Efficient. All title removals have been processed. Your name no longer appears on the joint property, effective immediately. No ceremony, no apology, just cold, clean truth. I exhaled, long and steady. My body didn't jump with joy. My heart didn't race. This wasn't triumph. This was extraction, a surgical removal from a sickness I'd spent too long calling family. I got to work, quietly tying off the remaining threads. I unsubscribed from the grocery delivery service Velma had hooked up to my account, still sending crates of expensive snacks to her house, like it was some family tax I owed. I shut down the autopay for the shared streaming accounts, the photo cloud, the password logins. One by one, I cut myself loose from every shared shadow they'd left behind. Then I drafted a message. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a release. Handled what I needed. No further responses required. I sent it into the void of the muted thread. Then, I opened a new folder on my desktop. Named it, Closure is Mine Now. Inside, I dragged the scanned title deed, the receipts, the screenshots, The thread where Zinnia suggested I skip Christmas for everyone's sake. The email where Velma denied borrowing my emergency fund, then Venmo'd it to herself the same day. I didn't plan to reopen that folder, but I needed it to exist. Proof. Not for them. For me. Because when someone tries to rewrite your story, you better be ready to show them the original. I passed the hallway mirror on my way to the bedroom. Something stopped me. I hadn't looked at myself, really looked, for days. I stepped back and stared. My reflection stared back. Same eyes, same face, but different posture. I didn't look like someone trying to win anyone back. I didn't look like someone begging to stay. I looked like someone who had finally stood still, long enough to let the storm pass, and realized she was still standing. "You broke me once," I whispered to the mirror. My voice didn't shake. This time, I'm the one walking away. I turned off the lights. The room went dark, but for the first time in months, I didn't feel afraid of it. I felt free. Saturday morning arrived with a kind of hush, like the world had tiptoed in, not wanting to disturb me. The sunlight crept slowly across the living room floor, filtering in through the blinds, as if testing whether it still belonged here. For the first time in weeks, I didn't reach for my phone first thing. I made coffee, 2 scoops of the bold roast I'd hidden from guests. I watered the plants by the window, talking to them like they were old friends. I even pulled out that book I'd promised myself I'd finish, a collection of essays on stillness I'd barely cracked. For a moment, just a moment, I believed I might be able to slip into the rhythm of a life that belonged solely to me. One that didn't orbit around obligation, guilt, or manufactured loyalty. A quiet, self-authored kind of life. Then my phone lit up. 1 missed call, then 3, then 7. The family group chat, as always, had undergone another rebrand. It used to be called Emergency Mortgage Crisis. Then it became Unity Over Blood, and now it read Family Unity SOS. I didn't even need to open the thread to know what it meant. They were spiraling. A string of messages followed. "Let's talk tonight. No judgment, just solutions. Time to come together. We can fix this. We need to regroup." And finally, the one that froze my fingers mid-scroll. Zinnia. "Let's be real. Don't invite her this year. She ruins the mood." I stared at the screen. Her profile photo hadn't changed. It was still that overly filtered Thanksgiving group shot, taken at the house I'd partially paid for. The one where I was cropped out, just beyond the edge of the fireplace. Smiling, arms full of pies. Forgotten. I didn't respond. I didn't even finish reading the thread. I took a breath, captured screenshots of every message, and moved them into a folder I'd created at my attorney's suggestion. Defamation log. Inzio 1. It was growing faster than I expected. Instead of spiraling, I reached for something else. A weathered book from the bottom shelf, one my dad had given me years ago. It wasn't about money or law or ambition. It was about stillness. Something I hadn't known I was craving until recently. Halfway through the book, a page bent with use stuck out. A folded slip of paper had been tucked inside, thin, creased, with my dad's unmistakable handwriting. It read, "You are the one who gives without asking. Don't let them take that from you. Giving isn't weakness, baby girl. It's strength. But strength must be honored, or it turns into burden. And burden breaks." I sat there holding the letter, letting its truth crack through something tight inside me. It wasn't sadness that made my eyes sting. It was recognition, the ache of finally being seen, even in silence. I stood up and walked toward the photo wall. So many moments, frozen in time. But not mine. Zinnia's engagement party, where I had paid for catering and cleaned up solo at midnight. Gone. Curtis holding his newborn. I paid the hospital deposit when insurance didn't cover the rest. Gone. The family trip to Sedona, the one Velma took credit for? I had the receipts. Gone. I took down each photo, one by one. They clinked against each other as I dropped them into a trash bag. All except one. The picture of Dad and me, just us, laughing on the front porch, summer light in our hair. I tucked it behind my bedroom closet door, taping it inside so it wouldn't fall. That was the only memory I wanted to keep. Back in the living room, I checked my phone again. Zinnia had posted something new on her feed. A photo of a dimly lit family dinner, cropped tightly around the table. Caption: "Even when someone disappears, family still stands together." The comments rolled in like clockwork. "Hope you're okay. You've always been the strong one. She's probably going through something. Just pray for her." I didn't cry. I took screenshots. I attached them to an email titled Defamation Log, SU1, and sent it to my attorney with a single line, "For the case file." Then I powered off the phone and set it face down on the table. The silence didn't scare me, not anymore. "They wanted a quiet collapse," I said aloud, voice steady, steady in a way I hadn't felt in years. "What they're getting is controlled detonation." And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Not just free from them, but free to define what came next. No more adjusting the tablecloth. No more cropping myself out. No more pretending that being silent meant being kind. I wasn't disappearing. I was reclaiming. One photo, one folder, one truth at a time. I pulled out of the parking lot just before sunset. The little store-bought chocolate cake, still in its plastic container, sat on the passenger seat beside a worn paperback copy of All the Pretty Horses. It was Dad's favorite. I'd found it last night in a box marked Winter Coats, and for some reason, it felt right to bring it with me. The drive from Denver to Boulder wasn't long, just under an hour, but long enough to make me feel like I was crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The air carried that dry chill that comes when summer starts losing its grip. Golden light filtered through the cottonwoods, and I noticed the way their branches moved, like they were exhaling, like they too had been holding their breath. I passed the restaurant where I'd waited alone the week before. That awful Tuesday. I didn't flinch. I didn't even glance at the valet stand. It didn't mean anything anymore. Some places lose their meaning when the people in them stop meaning anything. Edith's care home was quiet. Peaceful even. The woman at the front desk gave me a brief nod as she buzzed me in. She didn't ask who I was, or why I carried a lopsided chocolate cake with a single candle taped to the lid. Maybe she knew, or maybe she'd stopped trying to make sense of the stories that walked through those doors. Some visits don't need explanations. They're written on your face, in your hands, in the quiet way you move. I found Edith sitting near the wide front window in the common room. The light made everything glow a little. She was flipping through one of those oversized magazines meant for aging eyes. More pictures than text, the kind that fills space, but not necessarily minds. She looked up slowly, squinting at first, then grinning in that soft, crinkled way of hers. "Well," she said, folding the magazine in her lap, "would you look at that?" "Happy belated birthday to me," I said, holding up the cake like it was a trophy. She chuckled. "You're the only person I know who brings her own cake to her own party." "With one candle," I added, "and no guest list." "I'd say one guest is enough," she said. I set the cake on the little coffee table between us. I used the tiny lighter I kept in my purse, mostly for emergency incense or frayed shoelaces. Apparently now, for birthday symbolism too. I lit the candle. The flame flickered weakly in the late sun. We didn't sing, didn't make a wish out loud. We just sat and shared a crooked slice of too sweet cake and sipped coffee that had been sitting on the warmer too long. It was bland, but I didn't mind. I don't think she did either. In that moment, I felt more seen than I had in years. "I never had a daughter," Edith said after a while, leaning back. "But if I had, I think I would have wanted one like you. Stubborn, not soft. The kind of girl who doesn't wait for someone to offer her a chair, just drags one over and sits down." I stared at her, holding her words like a photograph I wanted to press into a book and keep forever. "If I'd had a mother like you," I said quietly, "maybe I wouldn't have spent so many years learning how to exist in rooms where no one saved me a seat." We didn't cry. Neither of us even blinked hard. Some griefs don't spill out. They just settle. By the time I left, the sky had turned that pale lavender shade you only get in Colorado, between late summer and early fall. The road back home felt different. Lighter. My phone buzzed twice in the cup holder. I didn't check it until I parked outside my building. The screen lit up. Voicemail from Velma. I pressed play. Her voice came through, hoarse and shaking. "You've made your point," she said. "This family is breaking because of you." I didn't finish listening. I deleted the message mid-sentence, before she could list all the other things I'd apparently destroyed. The guilt wasn't mine anymore, and I wasn't going to borrow it back. In the mailbox downstairs, a plain envelope waited. Legal stationery. I knew what it was before I tore it open. It was done. Signed and notarized. Final and binding. My name no longer appeared on any shared property titles. No more joint accounts. No more inherited obligations. Every last thread had been cut. Clean, official, irreversible. Inside my apartment, I turned on the lamp by the bookshelf and lit the same candle I'd used with Edith. I didn't know why. Maybe I just needed to mark the moment with light. Then I sat down and pulled out a blank note card. "Happy birthday, Aileen. You were worth showing up for." I placed it next to the only framed photo I still kept. Me and Dad, standing ankle-deep in a lake upstate, holding fishing rods, and grinning at something I can't remember anymore. But we looked happy. I was barefoot. He was wearing that old ball cap he never let anyone touch. Then I opened my laptop. New folder, new file. Title: What I Owe Myself. Chapter 1. I didn't write a manifesto. I didn't draft a speech. I just typed, slowly, carefully, not to prove anything to anyone, but because I finally could. Because my story didn't belong to them anymore. And as the words filled the page, I realized something. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Sunday arrived before the sun even broke the horizon. I didn't need an alarm to wake me. My eyes opened to silence. No buzz of my phone, no urgent texts, no one tugging on the edge of my peace. The stillness wasn't just quiet. It was earned. And this time, it didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like space. Mine. I stepped barefoot across the cool hardwood floor, heading toward the kitchen. My steps felt different. Less rushed, more grounded. I brewed a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter, listening to the faint hum of the machine and the occasional birdsong outside. Still no alerts, no calendar reminders. Just me, my breath, and the soft beginning of a day I didn't have to survive. I could simply live. Coffee in hand, I walked to the patio and did something I hadn't done in months. I slid the door open. Fully. The morning air rolled in gently, not sharp, not intrusive, just honest. Like it wasn't asking anything of me. And I didn't flinch. I took a long sip of coffee, then just stood there, watching the sky shift colors. I wasn't waiting for anything or anyone. For once, I didn't feel like I was preparing for battle. I wasn't rehearsing a defense or crafting a careful reply. I wasn't trying to earn space that was already mine. My phone buzzed from the other room. I didn't rush. I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug, and dried my hands before checking it. Voicemail, from Curtis. I hesitated for a beat, then played it. No greeting, no emotion. Just his voice, sharp and familiar. "Mom's freaking out. The mortgage is overdue again. The bank's calling. You knew this would happen when you pulled out." Just like that. No responsibility. No reflection, just blame, tossed like a hot potato in my direction. I didn't feel heat rise in my chest. I didn't feel the sting I used to. I just forwarded the message to my attorney with a simple subject line: "Do not engage." A few minutes later, another ping. The family group chat I hadn't touched in over a week lit up. Velma. "We didn't raise you to be cold." Zinnia, like clockwork, chimed in. "You're still family, but family doesn't abandon." I just stared at the screen for a moment. They didn't raise me to be cold. They raised me to be silent, to absorb. to bend, to keep showing up even when the door was closed in my face. This wasn't abandonment. This was preservation. For the first time in my life, I wasn't cutting ties out of anger. I was choosing peace over performance. I placed the phone face down and walked to the bedroom. My closet door was already half open, and I pulled it the rest of the way. Inside, still taped to the wood, was a photo of Dad and me, slightly wrinkled from time, corners curled just a little. He was laughing in it, his hand on my shoulder, steady and proud. For a long time, I thought that photo was proof that I'd been loved. Once. But now? It reminded me of who I was when no one was watching. I grabbed a sticky note and wrote, "You didn't raise me to break. You taught me how to hold." I pressed it beside the photo and smoothed the edges flat. Then I went back to my desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up the document I'd started after my talk with Edith. The title still read, "What I Owe Myself, Chapter 1. I stared at the blinking cursor for a while, letting the quiet speak first. Then I began to type. Lesson 1. You are allowed to leave the table when love is no longer being served. I reread it. Then I smiled, hit save, and leaned back. I opened a new browser tab and searched for flights, not because I wanted to disappear, but because I wanted to arrive. Somewhere fresh. Somewhere I didn't carry old definitions of who I had to be. There would be no dramatic exit, no social media goodbye, no announcement, no final plea for understanding. Just a quiet decision, a booked seat, a tomorrow that belonged only to me. And that, right there, that was the freedom I'd been chasing all along. Not a house, not approval, not the illusion of reconciliation. But this. The soft click of a door opening in the morning, the taste of coffee without anxiety, the ability to read a cruel message and choose not to answer, the courage to say, "This isn't where I stay anymore." I didn't feel lonely, I felt whole, and I knew, wherever I was going next, I wouldn't be bringing their silence with me, only my voice, and that was enough. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. I spent years trying to earn a seat at a table that was never meant to hold me, and when I finally stood up, I realized I had the strength to build my own. If you're listening and you've ever felt like the background character in your own life, I want you to know this. Your worth isn't defined by who claps for you, but by how you choose to clap for yourself. Now I'm curious, have you ever had to let go of people you once called family just to finally find peace? Share your story in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from. And if this video resonated with you, drop a 1 in the chat. Or tell me why it didn't. I welcome every voice here. If you believe in healing, strength, and stories that speak to the heart, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. There's more truth where this came from. Hi, I'm Nadine. My parents didn't just turn their backs on me, they filed papers to take my son from me. In court. Like I was a stranger. They used my worst moments text messages, photos, a voicemail I barely remembered, to build a story where I didn't belong. And then, my own sister stood up and told the court I was unstable. But the most haunting part? They never expected my 9-year-old son to find their plan folded, hidden, printed out in black and white. Why would parents go that far? What kind of family builds a case to erase their own blood? And what happens when the quietest person in the room is the one holding the truth? I was pouring milk into Ellis cereal when the letter came. It slipped under the door. Just another envelope at first glance. I didn't think much of it, bills maybe. A school reminder. The light outside was still soft, not fully morning, and Ellis was humming some made-up tune between spoonfuls. He asked if Grandma would be coming to his school play next week. I told him I wasn't sure, knowing full well she wouldn't. Not anymore. Then I picked up the envelope. There was a county seal on the front. Heavy paper. My hands stopped moving. I read it once. Then again. My throat dried up. Petition for temporary custody. Filed by Alton and Vera Shipman, my parents. I must have made a noise, a small one, because Ellis looked up and asked if everything was okay. I smiled thin, too quick, and told him to finish his breakfast. My hand trembled as I tucked the letter behind the toaster, like hiding it would undo it. The rest of the morning moved in pieces. I packed Ellis lunch, walked him to school, even waved at the crossing guard like always. But the letter stayed in my head, loud as thunder. My own parents, taking me to court, over my son. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table and tried to make sense of the timeline. We'd never been close. Vera made that clear years ago. She said I was dramatic, sensitive, not built for motherhood. I remembered her words after Ellis was born. You're exhausted because you make it hard on yourself. After the divorce, I let them visit Ellis sometimes. Supervised, brief. I thought I was being generous. I thought, maybe peace could be manufactured if I just kept the volume down. But peace wasn't what they wanted. They wanted control. And when they couldn't get it gently, they filed for it. I called Vera. It rang once before she picked up. Did you get the letter? She asked. No warmth, no pretense. You filed for custody, I said. It sounded absurd out loud. This isn't personal, Nadine, she said flatly. We're concerned. Concerned. That word again. A weapon dressed in etiquette. Alton came on the line, his voice clipped like he was giving instructions to a patient. We've consulted professionals. We just want what's best for Ellis. I am what's best for Ellis. It's not about you. I am your daughter. He didn't respond. The line clicked dead. I sat there for several minutes, my hand still holding the phone like it could pull answers through silence. Later that day, my court-appointed liaison emailed me a copy of the filing. Attachments included a screenshot of an old Facebook post where I'd said, "Some days, I feel like I'm barely keeping up." A voicemail from 2 years ago, crying after Ellis had the flu for 5 nights straight. A private message I sent to a friend after the divorce. I don't know how to be everything at once. Those words scraped from my worst nights were now used as evidence. Emotional instability, social withdrawal, unfit to parent. They cut pieces out of my life, pasted them back together into a story I didn't recognize, then put their names at the bottom as narrators. Ellis came home that evening, excited about something they were building in art class. I nodded, asked questions, made dinner. He didn't notice I only picked at my food. When he fell asleep on the couch, still clutching the dog-eared book he refused to finish without me, I sat beside him and watched the rise and fall of his chest. So steady, so unaware. I opened the drawer beneath the TV stand, slipped the court documents beside Ellis' birth certificate. 2 papers. One that brought him into this world, and one that tried to take him away from me. I thought I had lost enough, I whispered to the room, to the dark. I didn't know yet that what they wanted wasn't custody. It was erasure. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Not in temperature, though the air did bite a little, but in presence. It smelled like paper and polish, and everything echoed a bit too long. My heels clicked against the tile as I walked in, but when I entered the courtroom, I moved quieter, like noise might give them more ground. They were already seated when I arrived. Alton and Vera sat together, upright, faces unreadable. They didn't look at me, not even a flicker. To their right, Isolde's sister was flipping calmly through a thick binder, her hair pinned like she'd stepped out of a political commercial. I took my seat across from them. My hands rested in my lap, not shaking, just heavy. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't concern. This was premeditated. They hadn't come to court to express worry. They'd come to take. When Isolde was called to testify, I already knew what was coming. What I didn't expect was how clean it would sound. She spoke with that calm tone she'd perfected in board meetings and donor luncheon, sequel parts, gentle and firm. She's always had trouble with consistency, Isolde said. There were patterns even when we were teenagers. She'd start things, then drop them. She struggled to maintain boundaries. She mentioned missed lectures in college, a part-time job I quit after 3 weeks. My failure to attend Mom's charity gala the year I was dealing with postpartum fog. It's not about who Nadine is at her best, she said, looking at the judge. It's about who Ellis needs on his worst days. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just stared straight ahead, trying to remember if it was this same woman who once held my hand when I was sobbing in the stairwell after failing my biology final, who once whispered, "You don't have to be them, Nadine." I guess I did have to be them if I wanted to stay in the family. The slideshow came next. Their lawyer called it family milestones. Images flashed across the screen. My parents cutting the ribbon at a new church wing. Isolde in cap and gown. Family vacations at national parks. Thanksgiving tables filled with smiles. I waited to see myself. I barely appeared. One Christmas photo showed me, blurry in the corner, reaching for a cup. In another, Eid been cropped out altogether. Ellis was shown smiling beside Isolde, her hand on his shoulder. My name wasn't said. My presence was erased. I looked toward the bench. The judge watched quietly, occasionally jotting notes. My own lawyer didn't object. It wasn't illegal to edit memories. I dug my nails into my palm, just to remind myself I still existed. 2 months earlier, Eid received a voicemail from Isolde. At the time, I didn't know what she was trying to say. "I always tried to shield you," she had said, "but now I need to protect what's left." What's left? That phrase burned more now. What was left, apparently, was the version of the family that didn't include me. The version that worked on paper. The one that looked tidy and predictable in court. Maybe they'd kept me on the edge all these years because they didn't know how to make me fit. Maybe it'd always been the draft copy they planned to revise out later. I realized then, my place in this family had always been conditional, and I broke the contract the moment I didn't self-destruct quietly. I thought about standing up, saying something, anything, but I didn't. Instead, I reached into my purse and found the crumpled piece of paper Ellis had drawn for me the week before. A sun, with a tiny house beneath it. Stick figures. One tall, one small, and a caption in crooked handwriting. "Mom and me. We don't need anyone else." I held on to that as the session wrapped. As Isolde laughed softly with the family attorney, I sat still. They didn't come to court to argue. They came to bury me in revision, in reputation, in silence. But I've buried enough pieces of myself for them already. Sunday came and left like a storm I wasn't allowed to name. Ellis was supposed to be dropped off at 6 p.m., like always. He'd cleaned his room earlier that day, folded his favorite blanket at the foot of the bed, even set aside a little plastic robot I found at the grocery store, something small to remind him this place still belonged to him. But 6 came and went. Then 7. Then 8. I called twice. No answer. I texted Vera. "Is he coming home tonight?" Red. No reply. By 9, I was in the car, driving the familiar route to their house. Every light red like the world itself had been told to wait. Their porch light was off. Curtains drawn. The car wasn't in the driveway. Nothing stirred. Back home, I sat on Ellis' bed and stared at the digital clock beside his nightlight, 10:47 p.m. I whispered into the voicemail box after the 4th try, trying to keep my voice calm for the record, though my stomach had dropped hours ago. Has not a prize. Has a person. Has my son. I hung up. The silence afterward felt intentional. The next morning, I got a call from the school front desk. Not from Vera. Not from Alton. From the receptionist, polite but confused. "Hi, Ms. Shipman. Ellis was dropped off this morning by his grandmother, and he forgot his lunch. Just making sure someone's bringing it?" That was how I found out my son had been returned. I drove straight there, heart in my throat, lunch in my lap. At the front office, I saw Vera walking out. She didn't look surprised to see me. She didn't even blink. "He seemed more peaceful with us," she said, adjusting her scarf. "It was better that way." I smiled. I didn't know how else to keep from screaming. Inside the school, Ellis ran to hug me like nothing happened. And maybe, to him, nothing had. But to me, everything did. Because when people start making decisions for you, especially about your own child, they've already decided you don't matter. By Wednesday, our next court update was logged in the shared system. I logged in through the portal and scrolled through the newly added affidavits. One line stood out: evidence of emotional distancing initiated by respondent. There were message screenshots included. A thread between me and Ellis, cropped at just the right places. One line, taken entirely out of context: "Stay close to me. They don't know you like I do." I remembered that message. It was from when he told me Vera had scolded him for crying after a bad dream. I had comforted him, told him his feelings were safe with me. That line, now presented as emotional manipulation, made my chest burn. They weren't just trying to take Ellis. They were trying to paint me as obsessive, possessive, dangerous. Their strategy wasn't legal, it was narrative. They weren't just trying to win. They were trying to rewrite me. That night, Ellis curled beside me on the couch. We were watching one of those old cartoons he liked, something loud and fast, colors flashing every second. But he wasn't really watching. He looked up at me, then away, then back again. "They told me not to call you," he said quietly. "They said you'd be upset." I didn't say anything. I just pulled him closer, my arms wrapping around his shoulders, like a net trying to hold back the ocean. When your child starts choosing who not to hurt, you realize he's already had to grow up. He fell asleep halfway through the show, head against my chest. I watched the light of the screen flicker across his face and wondered how much he understood. Probably more than he should. After tucking him into bed, I opened my laptop. I started collecting things, not just emotions, documents, screenshots, dates, voicemails, school reports. I opened a folder titled Custody Defense and began dropping them in. I saved one of Ellis' journal entries from school. He'd written, in that half-print, half-cursive style of 9-year-olds, "Mom loves me even when I cry. That's how I know she's mine." It felt like a lifeline. I looked at the calendar. Court resumed in 5 days. They wanted to erase me with ink and paper, but I'd answer them with the only thing they didn't expect: the truth. Ellis ran up to me outside the school with the kind of excitement that made you forget for a second everything was falling apart. "Look what Grandma and Grandpa got me!" He held out a shiny new handheld game console one I recognized instantly. It was the same model I'd ordered for him weeks ago, after saving up from a side project I'd done for a local bakery. I'd spent 20 minutes comparing prices, 20 more picking out a case with little cartoon planets on it. But when the package never showed up at my apartment, I assumed it had gotten lost in the holiday shuffle. I smiled, even as my stomach sank. "That's cool, buddy," I said, masking the recognition. "Grandma said they got it just for me, 'cause I've been so good." His voice was bright, full of belief. I waited until after bedtime. Once Ellis was asleep, I pulled up my inbox and searched the tracking number. Delivered to their address. 3 days ago. They had taken the gift I bought, wrapped it in their affection, and handed it to him like they were the givers. Like I was absent. Like I didn't exist. It wasn't just a toy. It was affection redirected. Intimacy repackaged. Later that night, as I rinsed dinner plates and put away leftovers, I asked gently, "How did it feel staying at their place this time?" He didn't look up from the kitchen table. "Fine, just fine. They have better snacks, and I can watch whatever." I dried my hands, turned to face him. "Do you feel safe there?" His head bobbed in an almost imperceptible nod. Too quick. Practiced. I didn't ask more. You don't ask a child to choose safety over comfort. You just pay attention to the answers they're not ready to give. After he went to bed, I started sorting through a storage bin in the hallway closet, just to feel like I had control over something. Under a pile of old bibs and formula coupons, I found a yellowed envelope addressed in my handwriting. It was still sealed. He'd written it to my mother, sometime during those early weeks when Ellis wouldn't sleep for more than 90 minutes at a time. My breasts ached, my hair matted, my eyes hollow. I'd written it at the kitchen table at 3 a.m., too afraid to call, too angry to ask for help. "I know I'm not perfect," the letter began, "but I want you to see me. Just see me." I sat on the floor of the hallway and read the whole thing, still sealed, reading through the thin paper. My handwriting curved nervously back then, like even my words were afraid to take up space. I never mailed it. I guess deep down, I knew it wouldn't be read even if I had. That kind of grief doesn't make you cry. It just takes up space inside you and lives there. I folded the envelope back, placed it on the coffee table. I couldn't throw it out. I couldn't deliver it either. I opened my old phone, an older model, cracked at the corner but still functional, and started the camera. It wasn't for court. It wasn't for the lawyer. It was for me. I don't know what else they'll take, I said into the screen. But if they keep coming, they're going to find out what happens when you try to erase someone who has nothing left to lose. I saved the video. Didn't send it anywhere. Some truths weren't meant for others to judge. They were meant to keep you steady when the floor moved. The next morning, I dressed in silence, made coffee, packed Ellis lunch. As I reached for my coat, I tucked the letter, the one he'd written years ago, the one no one ever read, into the inner pocket. It didn't change the court's evidence list, but I wasn't walking into that building empty-handed anymore. That letter was never opened. But this story? I won't let them write the last page. The courtroom had a stillness that felt less like silence and more like watching a storm creep in through a sealed window. I sat straighter than I needed to, hands folded, listening to the shuffle of papers and the faint cough of someone behind me. Then they called him, Dr. Harlan Vexley. He walked in like he'd been here before, confident, polished, voice steady. A man used to being believed. A man who never had to explain the spaces between his words. He was introduced as a licensed psychologist, brought in to provide an objective behavioral assessment. But I'd never seen him, never spoken to him, and he had never met Ellis. Still, he spoke with authority, quoting vague studies and naming patterns like inconsistent maternal response and attachment disorganization due to emotional volatility. I felt my shoulders stiffen. Elismi Ellis was being discussed like a case file, like a collection of checkboxes. The judge asked no questions. My lawyer leaned over, whispered, "Let me do the talking." I nodded, because my voice was already being overwritten in real time. Dr. Vexley claimed Ellis displayed hesitation in relational alignment, that his drawings showed maternal anxiety symbolism, whatever that meant. My son draws dragons and planets is 9. Then came the dagger. In my professional opinion, the child's current living environment may be contributing to developmental confusion and emotional unpredictability. I stared at him, my pulse so loud I could barely hear his next sentence. Not once did he say the word love. When it was our turn, my attorney stood and asked plainly, "Dr. Vexley, have you ever observed Ms. Shipman in person?" "No." "Have you ever spoken directly to Ellis Shipman?" "No." "Then your entire testimony is based on documents provided by the plaintiff, correct?" "Correct." It should have been enough to break him. But it wasn't. Because he didn't need facts, just tone. Words like concern, emerging patterns, suggestive behaviors. They floated in the air, dressed like science, but built like insinuation. I sat there, letting each phrase land, letting each pause underline what no one dared say out loud. She is the problem. The judge nodded, made a note. That's all it took. Then came Exhibit B. The plaintiff's counsel handed over a folder marked Historical Medical Concerns. Inside was a document I recognized and didn't. A postpartum evaluation from when Ellis was a newborn. Only it wasn't accurate. The name of the clinic was correct. The counselor's name, yes. But the date was off by a year. And the language? The words weren't mine. It described prolonged episodes of detachment, refusal to breastfeed, and disassociation under stress. I remembered my sessions. They were hard, but I showed up. I cried, I talked. But I was never diagnosed. I was told I was tired, human, new. I leaned in, whispering to my lawyer, "That's not real. That's not what was written." He nodded once, raised his hand. The judge paused and agreed to review the original medical record before ruling on the exhibit's admissibility. But the seed was planted, and they knew it. I didn't react. I didn't flinch. I let the accusation hang in the air and chose to respond with something harder than anger, stillness. Because that's what they were trying to steal. My calm. Vera sat across from me, writing notes like she was documenting a museum display. Isolde sat beside her, arms folded, like she'd already accepted the judge's ruling. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their silence was its own declaration. But I wasn't sitting for them. I was sitting for Ellis. I took a breath. They wanted me to crumble, to fit the frame they built. But I wasn't going to oblige them. I could feel the shape of my strength now. Not loud, not sharp, just there. After court, I drove home without music. Ellis was with a sitter. The house felt too still, but for once that wasn't a threat. It was room. I opened the drawer beside my bed and pulled out the file I'd started 3 weeks earlier. Pay stubs, teacher notes, Ellis attendance record, photos of birthday cakes made in my kitchen, a note from his dentist. No missed appointments. I laid them out like armor. They wanted to bury me under paperwork. I'd answer with mine. And this time, the words would be true. The first thing I noticed was the phrasing. I had gone down to the courthouse clerk's office to request copies of recent filings. It was a routine part of this hellish process, now more folders, more ink, more words meant to reduce my motherhood to a mistake. I was skimming through the latest motion when the language stopped me cold. In a section labeled Custodial Notes, Ellis was referred to as the child of the respondent. Not her son, not Ellis Shipman, just that clinical, distant, and deliberate. The same way you'd describe a missing briefcase or a misplaced invoice. I kept reading. In the part where the court typically lists primary caregiver, the line beside my name was left blank. Blank. I blinked, reread it, and set the paper down slowly, careful not to crumple the edge like it was something alive. My fingers felt colder than they should have, and the room, the beige walls, the fluorescent lighting suddenly pressed in on me like a sealed box. I walked out into the sharp air of the parking lot and sat in my car without turning the engine on. The word respondent echoed louder than the heater ever could. Later that afternoon, I picked Ellis up from school. He was waiting by the main entrance, swinging his backpack like nothing in his world had shifted. His cheeks were red from the cold, his smile unbothered. "They taught us a new song in music today. You want to hear it?" I nodded. "Of course!" He hummed the first few bars as we walked to the car. It was off-key and perfect. I didn't mention the document. I couldn't, because no matter what language the court used, he still called me Mom. At home, I made dinner while he sprawled on the floor, half playing, half humming. I offered to help him clean out his backpack before he returned to his grandparents the next morning. He groaned but agreed. "Let me grab it," he said, dragging it toward the table. As we unzipped compartments and dug through snack wrappers and folded worksheets, something caught my eye. A folded piece of paper tucked in a hidden zipper pouch on the back. "What's this?" Ellis paused. His face went still. "I don't know if I was supposed to take it. I found it at Grandpa House, behind the desk." I opened it slowly. The page was printed, the header marked with a date from 2 months prior. Guardianship Strategy, Contingency Plan A. My vision narrowed. Paragraph after paragraph laid out talking points, phrases to use in court, strategies to emotionally distance Ellis from me while maintaining the appearance of moral clarity. It was signed digitally by someone from a private law office I hadn't heard of before. Ellis stood silently, waiting. I folded the paper shut. "Why didn't you show me sooner?" He hesitated, then said, "I didn't want to make things worse." I thought, maybe it'd be better to wait, for when it really mattered. That undid me. I crouched down, pulled him into my arms, and finally let myself cry. Not loudly, not with drama. Just enough that he felt it on the side of his neck, where my cheek rested. I've been collecting receipts, I thought, but he collected the truth. I didn't ask more. I didn't need to. Whatever instincts I had that were supposedly unstable had raised a boy who knew the weight of silence and when to break it. After he fell asleep, I sat at the dining table with the letter open again. I read every word twice. I scanned it, saved it to a secure folder, and emailed it to my lawyer with a subject line that read, "Found by Ellis. Confirm admissibility." Then I whispered something aloud, to no one. They made their move. Now I'll make mine. I slipped the paper into a plastic sleeve and filed it in my binder. A quiet weapon, because no one expects a mother to fight back with silence, until that silence holds their secrets. The manila folder under my arm felt heavier than it was. I clutched it like armor as I walked into the courtroom that morning, my heels firm against the tile floor. Not fast, not slow, just deliberate. My attorney met me at the table, already aware. "We got the confirmation," he said, nodding toward the folder. "It's admissible." I didn't smile. I didn't need to. I just placed the folder gently in front of him, like it was a torch ready to burn everything down. Across the aisle, Alton sat stiffly. His mouth was tight. Vera was too busy pretending to take notes to make eye contact. Isolde looked at her phone, poised like this was just another meeting to get through. But I watched my father's jaw shift when the judge called for the submitted material to be read aloud. "Counsel, please proceed with Exhibit 12, the judge said. My lawyer stood. "Your Honor, this document was recovered by the minor child and brought forward by the respondent. It is titled Guardianship Strategy Contingency Plan A." The clerk handed copies to the judge and the opposing table. There was a silence before the judge began to read. "Ensure emotional framing that highlights respondent's instability without initiating direct character attacks. Utilize third-party testimony to support concern narrative. Suggested language, we just want what's best." Every word was another nail in the coffin they built for me. Goal: minimize her legal standing while retaining public moral clarity. Consider alternative custody framing that favors consistency over primary parental rights. My father shifted. His attorney leaned in and whispered something. Vera stared forward, her pen frozen over an empty notepad. I didn't gloat. I didn't move. I just let the words fill the room like smoke. They had tried to erase me in a courtroom built to pretend everyone had a voice, but they wrote their plan in ink. And I brought the original script. When recess was called, I stepped out into the hallway, needing air without judgment. I stood by the vending machine, mostly for the hum. Sometimes it helped drown the thoughts. Then I heard her heels. Doreen Mackey, our neighbor. The same woman who'd stood in court last month and said she heard yelling and erratic behavior from my apartment. The same woman who forgot I helped her fix a busted garbage disposal in the middle of February. She hesitated near me, clutching her purse. I was told, she began. "They said you were unstable, that you might lose it in court." I looked at her. Not hard, not kind, just honest. "And?" she swallowed. "Your father helped us out last spring, paid for the roof repairs when we didn't qualify for the loan." I nodded once. "You know what it's like to depend on someone," I said softly, "until it stops being help and starts being obedience." She blinked, then looked away. I didn't chase her apology. She wasn't the first to fold, and I was done collecting regret. Back inside, my attorney and I regrouped. The judge's tone had changed, still formal, but now professionally distant from the other side. Like the robe was finally doing what the law was designed to do. "Listen. Well, use the letter as grounds to review the timeline of previous testimony," my lawyer said. "And that recording Ellis made? We're going to push for it next." I nodded. For the first time since this started, I wasn't just defending myself. I was defining the narrative. I didn't speak to Alton or Vera as I walked past them that afternoon. Their table looked smaller now, their eyes tired. Ellis' drawing folded and tucked inside my bag felt like a declaration now, not a comfort. They didn't expect the letter to speak, but now the silence belongs to them. It was a Friday, but not the kind that promised weekend relief. The courthouse air was sterile, cold, but it carried a kind of weight like a closing argument that had already been written by something greater than law. Every step I took echoed louder than it should have. Every glance felt like a judgment. Ellis' hand was wrapped tightly around mine as we stepped into that courtroom. His fingers were small but certain. In my other hand, tucked into my bag, was the letter, the one they never meant for me to find. The one Ellis had quietly protected, tucked into his sketch folder like a secret too big for his little heart. My lawyer, Mr. Rosenthal, met me at our table. He didn't say much, just a nod. But it was enough. There was nothing left to rehearse. The moment had arrived. The judge asked if we had anything further to submit before final statements. His voice was neutral, procedural, but there was an edge. He already sensed the shift in the air. "We do," Rosenthal replied, his tone low but steady. He reached into the folder and produced the letter with careful hands, as though it were something sacred. "A letter, Your Honor, and a supplemental audio file for the court's consideration." The judge tilted his head slightly, signaling for the clerk. The other side of the courtroom shifted like a tide breaking. The opposing counsel began flipping papers they hadn't written, hadn't prepared for. Alton, my father, tugged at his collar. Vera, always the composed one, with her faux professional notebook, looked like she might actually need it now. "Let's proceed," the judge said, peering over his glasses. The clerk pressed play. It began with static then, scratchy, almost like the silence before a storm. And then my father's voice came through, clear, calm, calculated. "If we win this," he said, "she can't touch him again. That's the only way to be sure." The courtroom didn't erupt, but it cracked. You could feel it. A collective breath held, then shattered. It landed like a hammer on tile. I didn't move. I didn't turn around to watch the faces. I kept my eyes on the judge. Then, softer, a second voice, Ellis. Just one line. "I don't think Mom's bad." Just that. But sometimes a whisper reveals more truth than 1,000 accusations. The audio cut out. No music, no fade. Just silence, so sharp it rang in your ears. The judge sat back slowly, removing his glasses and folding them in deliberate silence. For a long moment, he said nothing. "This court," he finally began, "has reviewed the newly submitted evidence. In light of this audio file, the accompanying letter, and the surrounding implications, I find the plaintiff's credibility to be compromised." There it was. Alton didn't move. Vera stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. Isolde blinked like the light was suddenly too much. All their certainty, their smug coordination, seemed to flicker. "I will not be awarding custody to the petitioners," the judge continued. "In fact, I am ordering an immediate investigation into the conduct of this case. This includes a full review for possible witness coercion, document tampering, and psychological manipulation." Each word struck like a gavel on their empire of deception. I felt air return to my lungs, not in a gasp, but in slow, measured increments. Like my body didn't fully trust that the fight was over. "My son will remain with me," I whispered. It wasn't for anyone else to hear, just for myself. And this time, I believed it. When I stood, my legs didn't feel shaky. They felt rooted. I left that courtroom the way I came, indignified, upright, but I wasn't the same woman. This time, I wasn't walking into battle. I was walking out with something they thought they could take from me. In the hallway, Isolde passed by without meeting my eyes. Vera muttered something bitter. "You were lucky, I think." I didn't respond. Luck doesn't scan documents. Luck doesn't record audio. And luck didn't hand me that letter. Ellis did. Just outside the courthouse, he ran up to me, his coat flapping open, drawing folder clutched under his arm like it held the world. "Did we win?" he asked. I knelt down, brushing the hair from his forehead, looking into the eyes of the boy who had held onto more than just a drawing. "We told the truth," I said. He nodded like that was all he needed. Maybe for him it was. As we crossed the parking lot, I reached into my pocket and touched the letter again. Folded, worn at the edges. It wasn't written for court, but it carried more weight than all the affidavits and motions combined. That letter didn't appear on any official timeline, but it rewrote everything. They built a story without me. I just tore out the last chapter. Justice gave me space to breathe. Healing, though? That would be the long walk home, one step at a time. But now, at least, I could begin it on my own terms, with Ellis beside me, and no lies left between us. 2 weeks after the ruling, the house was still quiet in the mornings. The difference was, I could hear the quiet now, without wondering what else they might take from me. Ellis sat at the kitchen table, legs swinging beneath the chair, spooning cereal into his mouth like it was just another Tuesday. Because to him, it was. No court today, no suit to iron, no folder to double-check. Just him and me, and the sound of a spoon tapping a ceramic bowl. I didn't bring up the verdict. I didn't bring up the silence from the other side either. No phone call, no message, no dramatic fallout. Except for one thing. Isolde had sent an email. 2 words. I understand. I never responded. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Later that week, I walked Ellis to school. A neighbor who hadn't so much as looked at me in 6 months gave a soft wave as she trimmed her front hedge. A mom from Ellis' class leaned toward me at pickup and whispered, "You were braver than most of us would have been." I nodded. Not because I believed it, but because I was still trying to figure out what bravery even meant anymore. Alton and Vera still went to church every Sunday, still hosted community luncheons, still smiled in photos with their mouths pressed into a line that only looked like joy if you didn't know them. Pretending like nothing happened was their specialty. But I knew, and they knew I knew. People don't always have to say they're sorry to feel shame. Sometimes silence is their sentence. I hadn't been back to their house, not since all of this started. But I passed it once last week, driving Ellis home from school. The curtains were drawn, the yard too neat. Ellis didn't ask to stop. That night, I dreamed he stood at the edge of their driveway, holding the letter again, the one they never meant for me to see. But in the dream, he didn't hand it to me. He let it go, and the wind carried it away while he walked toward me without a word. I woke up and opened the drawer where I kept his birth certificate. The letter was there too, locked away. Not for revenge, just for remembrance. We didn't talk about court anymore. He didn't ask if Grandpa would ever call. I didn't offer an answer I couldn't stand behind. But healing isn't loud. It's not clean. It moves like water, quiet and unshaped, until it finds its way through. One evening, Ellis came to me with a folded paper in his hands. His cheeks were pink from the cold, his fingers slightly smudged with marker ink. He unfolded the drawing slowly. A house. A sun. 2 stick figures holding hands. Underneath, in his uneven print, home is not where people say it is. It's where someone waits for you. I didn't ask who told him that. I didn't ask if it came from a teacher or a book or just his own heart. I just pulled him close and whispered into his hair, "I'll always wait for you." Some promises are too big for courtrooms. This morning, I walked to work my new part-time job at the local community office. It's nothing fancy, filing, phones. But the chair's stable, and no one looks at me like I need to explain the past. I stopped by the corner grocery on the way home, grabbed a bag of fruit, and paused on the sidewalk as the wind picked up. The sky was bruised with winter, but I breathed easier than I had in a long time. They tried to take my name off the record, but my son made sure I was never forgotten. Some stories don't end with revenge. They end when someone chooses peace over silence. In the end, this wasn't just about custody. It wasn't even about courtrooms or legal strategy. It was about being seen, being heard, and refusing to let anyone, no matter how close, rewrite your worth. If you're a parent, a daughter, a survivor of a quiet war like mine, I want you to remember this. Silence can be strength, but only if you use it wisely. You don't have to scream to reclaim your name. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stand your ground with truth in your hands and love in your voice. I wasn't erased. I was rewritten by my own resilience and by the child who never stopped calling me Mom. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been made to feel invisible by the very people who should have supported you? How did you find your way back to yourself? Drop your thoughts in the comments, read every single one. And hey, if this video touched you, helped you feel seen, or made you think of someone you love, leave a comment with the number 1, or tell me what city or state you're watching from. And if you didn't connect with the story, let me know why. This space is for honest conversation, not just agreement. If you want more stories like this, real, raw, and deeply human, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next. Because healing doesn't happen in silence. It happens in stories. Let's keep telling them, together.